Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. Andrew Warner, I appreciate you coming to hang out, man.
Thanks.
So what's crazy about you to me is, and this is actually one of my favorite things about life, is when people ask me what I do, the chance of me telling them what I do professionally is very low.
Really?
Yeah.
Doesn't it come off as obnoxious? Like someone says, "What do you do?" because they want to put you in a box, and
Probably.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it depends on the audience, obviously.
Okay.
Right? It depends where I am. But more often than not, the only reason they're asking the question is to put you in a box.
Right.
I don't want to be in your fucking box.
They want to understand. So, are you successful enough for me to pay attention to? Are you doing something I could work with? Should I be intimidated? Should I intimidate you?
Right.
Yeah.
All that bullshit.
Right.
So normally I say something like, what do you do? I do a lot of running. I do a lot of snowboarding.
Yeah.
And then I'll go down some rabbit hole about it.
Yeah.
Right. And, inevitably, if the conversation persists, then we'll talk about business or whatever. One of the reasons that I bring that up is because when I get to know somebody, the question that I ask is, how do you spend your time?
Mm-hmm.
And that allows people to answer however they want, because I don't actually, depending on the context, care what they do professionally. I care about what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, et cetera. You, I knew that you had a podcast called Mixergy, but I really didn't know much about it other than I had a couple friends that had been on it. And I really knew nothing else. And for a few years now, we've been able to have a handful of conversations and hang out and get to know each other. And it wasn't until very recently that I got to know more about your business background, which is super cool. So I found out that you were like a grandpa of the internet, basically. So you had a company through the .com era that you bootstrapped to 38 million a year.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Selling gift cards.
It was offering them for free. And so this you're not going to relate to. Your audience probably is not going to relate to it, but their moms might. There's this group of people who just wanted to send greeting cards out to their kids or their cousins or their whatever. And we offered them for free online. And if somebody sent it to a friend, we'd say, "Do you also want to sign up for this email newsletter?" And truthfully, we pre-check the box, so we assume the close.
Yes.
And when they signed up for the email newsletter, they would get our email with a joke a day or trivia a day. I remember the biggest trivia question was, why is it called a hot dog if it's not made out of dog? Or why is it called a hamburger if it doesn't have any ham? And so people would read those and they'd pass them on. And that was where our upside was, that they would sign up to the newsletter, they would read it or get it every day, and we'd sell advertising in it. And then we got a little bit clever where this guy, Alan, said that he was making money through co-reg. And I said, "What's co-reg?" He said, "That's co-registration. If somebody signs up for your email newsletter, you can add a checkbox that says, do you also want to sign up for this other newsletter? And companies will pay you money to get subscribers for their newsletters." Interesting. So I found a company that was willing to pay $1.25 for each subscriber. And then I created an affiliate program where for at first 10 cents per card that was sent out, I would pay to the affiliate. So if you had a website, you'd send your people over to send out these greeting cards. I'd pay you 10 cents every time someone sent out a greeting card, and chances are I'd make $1.25 because they'd leave the checkbox pre-checked. And since then, and that's what allowed us to grow massively. Since then, because I created Mixergy years later, I started interviewing people who had done this, who were in this affiliate program. A lot of them were just kids at home whose parents were saying, "What the hell are you doing that you're making $10,000 a month?"
Crazy.
And it was, encouraging people to send out greeting cards.
So I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
And that's phenomenal. And it adds a lot of, back to, I think, the question of like, what do you do? It adds a lot of context relative to business.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we were talking about a minute ago before we kicked off was the value of putting out content today and podcasts today and interviewing people today. And I think that in a lot of ways, that background makes you uniquely qualified to be able to talk to people contextually, right? You have the history and the understanding and the experience to do that.
I would say this because I think when we say that, we scare off people. My goal would be to have more people do what you're doing here with me without this, like, I don't know, multi-million-dollar setup here, which is amazing. But I think that people can do this with nothing but a laptop, and I would even say not just without the track record of success, but with the track record even of failure or no track record at all. So I built that company up. It did phenomenally well. It was online greeting cards. I happened to have created an invitation site after that. The invitation site lost what seemed like a ton of money for me at the time because I hate to lose money. It was $300,000, I guess. And it failed and it closed up. And I decided I would do interviews with people to learn how to not screw up again and to learn how to do much better. And that was the premise for Mixergy. I didn't even talk about my previous company for a year or two. And when I did, people said, we didn't know anything about you. We were shocked that this existed. And why didn't you talk before? And I didn't talk before about myself because I thought this would be about how I can do better, not about how I can brag about my past. The point is that I didn't have a track record of success that allowed me to bring on these guests. I had this curiosity, this need, and I think that that's more important. I actually think that if we start out with a podcast that says, I want to show what I've done, that kind of thing is better on Instagram. It's better on YouTube. If we start out with this quest, I'm trying to do a thing and I'm going to go and talk to people who've done it, now people are interested. Much more so than, podcast about, let me learn from these people so that my audience can be smarter. Let me show my audience about. No, it's better to say, I'm on the quest to do this thing. I'm going to meet the people who've done it or who failed at doing it to learn from them. And then I'm going to share all that with the world. That, I think, is the best type of interview series. So just one example. I would much rather, instead of hearing someone who's an amazing athlete talk to other athletes and just interview them about how they did it, I would much rather have someone who says, I've never done an Ironman. I want to do my first Ironman. I'm aiming for this number, and I'm going to talk to people, both professional athletes and newbies who have done it, and see what they did and understand or hear the story about the person who forgot his goggles and what they did, so that if that happens to me, I'm prepared. As a listener, I think I would prefer that, and I know I would prefer it, and I think most people would too.
Sure. I think you're. First of all, I think you're completely right that most people would. Most people can relate to that more. Right? Yes. Most people in the world are not elite. Most people in the world are not the 1% or the 0.1%. So the audience is bigger doing that regardless.
I'm a big interrupter. I'm sorry. I would also say that we want to watch somebody on a quest. We want to root for someone, especially someone who is similar to us or has no business doing the thing that they're trying to do, but is really making progress.
Sure.
So the thing that I would love for anyone who's listening to this to do is to say, I've got this quest. I'm trying to do this thing. And then Andrew says I can go and do interviews. Go and do interviews. And I would love for them to put that out as a podcast. By the way, I have a great mic. I have it in the car, actually, because I didn't know what your setup would be. I have headsets. I have the whole thing. But as an experiment, because we moved to Austin, and I've been really enjoying the outdoors here in Austin, and I felt so jealous of people who were sitting in coffee shops with their laptops and working. And I said, as a podcaster, as an interviewer, I can't do that. I need good office space. And I said, wait, Kent is not really the way to go. And I was swimming in a Deep Eddy pool, which is a beautiful spring water-based pool. You can actually see the ring from the goggles from last night's swim, right?
You can a little bit, yeah.
I need better goggles. But I have nothing but an hour to think. And I said, wait, there's got to be a way. And so I found a way for anyone to record outside, and I did it myself. The key is use an app called Riverside, which records your guest on their computer, you on your computer. So if your internet at the coffee shop sucks, it doesn't matter. It's going to still have crisp recording from both people. And speaking of crisp, there's an app called Crisper. You add it to your Mac or PC. It eliminates background noise. Now, as a test, because I'm a pro, I went to Mozart and I told everybody around me, I want you to yell, I want you to scream, I want you to stomp your feet. We couldn't pick it up. Now, I did have a good mic. It was a Rode Podcaster under $100. But it worked. And so you don't have to have this amazing setup that Brad has.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Lots of things about that. Namely that you told the people in the coffee shop to be loud around you so you could test something.
Yeah.
I believe this. Yeah. I mean, I think that the takeaway there is that there are 1,000 ways to do things. And there's an audience for all of them right now more than ever before.
Yeah.
Also, we see people be successful in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of areas, and all sorts of crazy, bizarre, small niches right now, because that's still a lot of people. right? So you can be broad and you can go on a quest. You can also be very, very, very specific and still crush it.
Yeah.
So people ask routinely with us, oh, well, isn't that a competitive space? Payments, right?
Yeah. I wonder that too with you. How the hell are you competing? It's so competitive.
Yeah. It's also like debatably the largest or one of the largest industries on the planet.
Okay.
Every business that exists on the planet has to accept payments. So you can be in a tiny little segment of payments, and that can be a monster vertical, right?
What is your niche? Is it friends of Brad? Because I feel like that's what it is. There's like this vibe that you put out, a type of person that you hang out with, and I could see them in your customer base. Is that it?
That is the goal of my life, is to have alignment between business and my personal life.
I feel like you've got that, right? So if I'm looking at people, I remember we went on this ski trip where I didn't even go skiing. I just went for runs out in the snow. It was great. But I saw the people who were hanging out with you. They were people who are this outside of the Silicon Valley world, but also very deep in tech and very deep in like real businesses. You know what I mean? And they had this need to live a bigger life. They weren't just going to, I don't know, they weren't the people who were aspiring to sit on the couch. They were the people who were aspiring to do something, right? It feels like that's who your niche is, but is that it?
That's my niche as a friend group.
Okay.
That's who I want to spend time around. I want to spend time around ambitious, motivated, exciting people. And by the way, if they're an artist and they have that passion and they don't make any money, that's equally exciting to me. Maybe it's a little less exciting, but it's pretty similarly exciting. Doesn't matter. From a business perspective, I choose to focus on those people when I'm spending my time socially / in business because it's more fun, right? It's more fun to align those two things. EasyPay Direct as a company is much broader than that. So it's card not present merchant, so largely e-commerce, but people where the credit card isn't present, over $1 million that are more likely to have a challenge with payments. And if you're doing e-com in general, you have a much higher chance of having a problem than if you're like a coffee shop, for example.
Because there's card not present, because people are testing their
fraud is higher, the likelihood
cards.
of refunds and disputes are higher. There's no face-to-face transaction, so consumers don't feel the same connection. Yeah. So it's easier for them to dispute or refund. That's the broad stroke, I think.
You know, when you think about it, because it's so easy to dispute and get your money back, I'm surprised everybody doesn't do it. Like,
a lot of people do.
I know. And you know what's weird is you know who it is who's doing it because you got their contact information. You often can see that they've logged into the site. I can see it. And they're still like saying they never had access. And is it weird? Is it creepy for me to say, I always contact everyone who disputes and say, hey, Jim, what's going on? If you have a problem, can you call me? Here's my cell phone number.
Yeah.
Not a single person has ever called back.
Well, part of the problem is that Visa and MasterCard over the years have leaned really heavily away from convincing businesses to accept credit cards and really heavily into convincing consumers that it's okay, safe, and comfortable to use credit cards. And part of that messaging has leaned into, if you ever have a problem, don't worry about it, we'll take care of you. And so many, many, many consumers don't actually even know the difference between disputing a charge and getting a refund from the business owner.
And I would just you know me. If you don't like it, just say, I want a refund. I'll give you your money back.
And of course, it's radically worse for a business owner to get a charge back than just have a refund.
Forget about all the money and the hassle with the thing. Just, I feel hurt. Like, if you don't like it, just come back, right?
Yeah. So that's the world of payments. But I'm curious about the world of podcasting for you. So we could talk about 1,000 different things, and I think we probably will over some bourbon on a different day. But I think one of the things that ends up being a topic of conversation routinely as we look at businesses that are established, meaning they've got product market fit, they've got revenue in most cases, they're profitable, and they're launching, we see content distribution strategies amplify. And we see people putting out lots and lots and lots of stuff, and you have all these people out there promoting it in different ways, guru people. You've had a podcast for fucking ever.
Yeah.
Right? So so Mixergy started in 2007?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And has it been in the form of a podcast the whole time?
Yes. Though for a long time, you couldn't get a podcast on an iPhone without me giving you like a URL to add or something.
Crazy.
But yeah.
Crazy. So what's the difference? How do you behave now versus then? What has changed? How has your mentality changed from the interview process itself?
So the upside right now is that I've got a team that will prep me for each interview. So the guests will have gone through a pre-interview, we'll have researched them, we'll have done all kinds of background information searches on them. And it'll help us turn a lot of people away. But it also means that when I'm sitting down to do an interview, I have tons of information in front of me and I'm ready to guide it to what matters to the audience. In the beginning, what I had that I miss now is this sense of real need. And I've been thinking about that a lot. I was actually talking to my therapist about it yesterday. And I said, I think I'd feel more electrified if I could find a problem that I have that I care about and then focus the interviews on talking to people about how they got through that. And the thing is that I just don't have a problem that I think is especially interesting right now, you know? And so that's a bit of a challenge. Though now that I said it out loud, I wonder if I'm kind of looking for some new adventure. And I've been swimming a lot, and I think I'm going to see if I can do a long swim here in Austin. I should hit you up and see if you've got a suggestion. Maybe there's like a 4 or 5 mile swim on Lake Austin or something that I could do. But I talked to my therapist and I said, that doesn't feel right either. And he said, well, what would you feel very blah about or not like? The first thing that came to mind is dance lessons. He goes, all right, someone sign up for freaking dance lessons. And I'm not looking forward to it, but I'll try it. I wonder if what I should do, Brad, is talk to the people that I interview about what's the thing that they do that's out there, you know, for fun. Because then I could say, I'm coming at this with a need for what I want. And I could openly ask them about how they're doing. And it turns out entrepreneurs, the more successful they are, the more they could let their freak flag fly, or they're more successful because they've let it fly. So I was interviewing the founder of Epidemic Sound last week. By the way, I had no prep time for it, found an office last minute. I sat down, I had these beautiful notes from my team. I knew everything I needed to know about him. But I didn't know what he did to get himself to change as a leader as his business kept growing. I think it's like $100 million business right now, licensing out music. And he said, I went dog sledding with my kids. And he said, by dog sledding with my kids, I learned to be a different type of leader. I said, how do you mean? He goes, first of all, the kids love it because they're dog sledding and it's like, who goes on an adventure like that? And second, I'm used to being the person who pulls the sled in life. You, Brad, would not lead a conversation with him. He would lead the conversation. No one in the office would lead anything. He used to lead everything by doing. And he said, when you're on a dog sled, you can't run. You can't pull any harder than the dogs. You have to learn to say, we need the sled to go that way. And how do we get the dogs to go that way? And how do I get my family to be okay with that? And he said, that's the type of leader that he had to become in order to run this bigger business. Well, to me, I thought, how the hell do you get into dog sledding? Is that a real thing? So maybe that's what I should do, actually. Now that I think about it, what's their weirdest, most interesting things?
Well, you've opened, that wasn't actually any sort of real conclusive answer to the question I asked you, but...
Oh, what was the question? I took it where I wanted to go.
I loved it. But it opened up the door to your inner conflict, which is the question was, how do you do things differently now than you used to then? And what was interesting about the answer is that you had gone on this, down this path of how one of the most interesting things is people following a quest. Yes. And then the first thing you did to answer how you interview now is, somebody else gives me all the things I should ask ahead of time for my audience, which is the opposite of what your initial ambition was. And then you talked about how you can find your initial ambition again.
Yes.
Right?
So the difference is that now it's set. Everything that I aspire to do with it is there.
Yeah.
Now...
Except it's missing
what's the next thing to aspire to? And when I started, it was, how do I start a successful business? And I did. And then it would become, how do I not go crazy with a successful business? And so I started interviewing entrepreneurs who systemized the heck out of their, who started interviewing, who systemized the fuck out of their businesses.
Yes.
And that was super helpful for me. And that's how we got to where we are. And now I guess I am missing, what's the next quest?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be hip hop dancing, but I will sign up for that.
So when you started, it was this journey of, how do I learn, right? And how do I fix the problems from my previous business? How do I learn from other people that maybe not do that again?
Yeah.
And then it got really systemized and structured, which is super helpful for you because you can go into them prepared, but you lost some fire through that process.
I would say, maybe some fire, but it's more like the genuine curiosity, the striving, the thing that you're aiming for. Yeah.
So what makes a good guest on a show?
Someone who can tell a real story. I find that I'm really good at teeing up stories, but it's really hard for business-minded people to tell stories. It's hard for anyone in general to tell stories. One of the things that we spent a lot of time as a team, and I did as an interviewer with Mixergy doing, was learning how to get people to tell their stories. And that's a whole set of skills. So I actually just recently published a book, Stop Asking Questions, and it includes a lot of the things that we learned as a company for getting people to tell better stories that go deeper than they would ordinarily, that gets them to reveal things that they didn't know they were holding back. Very much like therapy, but on a mic, it's a different type of thing.
What are a couple bullets that trigger people to tell stories, or a couple tips for people?
The best thing is if you ask them to tell a story, they clam up or they think that you're going kindergarten on them. But if you say, tell me about a time when you... That's when they tell a story, right? So if I'm talking to the founder of Epidemic Sound and I want to hear a story about leadership, he's not going to think of one. But if I say, tell me about a time when you learned to be a better leader, tell me about a time when you had to lead in a new way, then they might say, well, there was this time I took my kids on a dog sledding trip and so on and so forth. But tell me about a time when. So we'll go general. What did you do? Or what's a big challenge? And for him, a big challenge was changing as a leader throughout. And I say, tell me about a time that you had to be a different leader. And then people will go to it. Another one is, give me an example of that. Or do you have an example of that? So they tell me something and all they're doing is just telling you fact. And you say, do you have an example of that? And they'll stop. Oh, yeah. Now, truthfully, in an interview with the lights like you have on me, with the mic on and everything, and people listening, it's sometimes hard for people to come up with clear stories. But one of the things that I discovered was if I could talk to the guests beforehand, they will come up with their stories in a much more chill environment, and then we can bring it into the interview.
Bourbon helps too.
The what?
Bourbon helps too.
I've been thinking about doing an interview with people over a drink. My problem is that I get too effusive, too excited when I drink.
I love that. So what's an example of that is a good way to dive deeper.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things in job interviews. And there's, needless to say, probably, but tremendous overlap between sort of a functional podcast interview and a job interview.
Yeah.
But it's a different setting. The level of comfort is different. The level of desire and openness is totally different too.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
But do you have an example of that? I think forces people to go from ethereal or strategic down to tactical.
Yes.
Where they're like, I need to give you something here.
Yes.
I love that. What kinds of stories are you looking for from guests? What kinds of things do you want people to focus on and tell?
I want to know what they did that was dramatic and then how they discovered it. So if someone says to me, I realized that going after influencers was the big unlock for me, I want to know, how'd you discover that? So I interviewed this founder who was the first employee of DoorDash. Employee number one told me in private how much money he made from keeping the stock. He literally cried in the interview when he was thinking about calling his mom up and saying, Mom, thanks for believing in me. This is how much our stock is worth, from that. It's in the tens of millions of dollars from being employee number one. And now he's created a company called Local Kitchens. And I said, how did you discover that this was the thing to do, which is license restaurant food and their name and put it all into one location so that people can drop in and pick up, or that you could do delivery from the one location? He said, you know what I realized? I was looking at DoorDash and I saw one day that what we were doing was just enveloping other businesses, like taking the business below us, which is the delivery, and putting it all into one. Like your pizza shop shouldn't have it, one delivery. The Chinese restaurant next door shouldn't have a different delivery person, and so on. We just kind of put it all into one. He said, I thought about it. I realized, what's the next step? The next step then is to put all the food into one. So you go upmarket a little bit more or take more. And so that's what he did. And I thought that the way that he came up with his decision, with his idea, was especially interesting. And I wanted to understand that. So I looked for that one moment where he had that realization. I looked for that example.
I love that. Yeah, ghost kitchens are something I never, ever, ever would have thought of.
His thing is a little bit different from ghost kitchens. Ghost kitchens, you're not really supposed to come in. He's saying, I'm taking over a restaurant space, like really taking over the whole space, renting it or buying the space, and then calling up people like Curry Up Now, which is this phenomenal Indian burrito place in San Francisco, and a couple of other places, and saying, can I license it? Teach us how to make it. I'll get professional chefs. They'll make your food the way that you have it. We'll buy your ingredients. We'll use your logo on the door so that people can order it online and come in and pick it up. or we'll deliver it too. So he's like, what if cloud kitchens also had a space to sit down or a place to come in and pick up? And so mom could have a salad and the son could have a burrito, an Indian burrito, and they could both have their favorites, even though they're coming together from different places.
Yeah, interesting. So what's the, I want to talk about tactical things around how you run the podcast as a business also.
Yep.
So you've got content production, which is what we've kind of been talking about broadly. How do you monetize? What do you do to monetize?
There are two things that we do. It's advertising or membership. In the beginning, a lot of people said to me, Andrew, I love these interviews. If you could even sell it to me. Really? You're actually telling me to sell it to you? All right. And so I said, I don't know how. I don't know if that really makes sense, but I need to sell something. And so people are telling me that they would buy the older interviews. Fine. I'm going to put the older interviews behind a paywall. I hate the phrase paywall. I'm going to charge for the older interviews, and I'll do it on a membership. And since I don't know what the heck I'm doing yet, I'm going to let people pay whatever they want. And so it's kind of ridiculous, but you could pay $10 a month, $25 a month, or $50 a month. And there's still people to this day who are paying $10 a month from back then, even though now the price has increased to $50 a month. And I discovered that the $50 a month people made me more money, but I wanted a bigger audience. And so I went lower. I went closer to $25. And all you got was older interviews. And then I started thinking, what else could I add to it? And I experimented until we decided that the best thing to do is offer what we call master classes, where I might have Justin Kahn on to tell the story of how he created Twitch, the company that he sold to Amazon for about $1 billion. But that's him telling his story of how he did it. If he is going to come in and teach you how you can find your business idea, your product market fit, that's more of a master class. And so for that, we drove over to his house and he recorded a master class for us. And that's part of the membership only content.
Is the relationship there that they just give you the interview and the content for you to then sell? Do you have a rev share with them?
I don't think that Justin Kahn, who sold this thing for $1 billion, wants a few bucks from me, especially considering that it's all... Now, truthfully, I could have made a mistake with that. If I were to redo it, I don't know if I would do that model, but I found that they didn't really want the money. They almost wanted to do it as a favor, and if I pay them, it belittles it and it's not enough. It's never going to be enough because I find that they need more money if they've made so much money already. Otherwise, what would they do for $5,000 that would trickle in over years? So I didn't do it. They do it because they want access to the audience. Some people have said they've done it. A lot of them said they do it because they just, as a favor to me, they were on the podcast. They got a lot out of it and they want to be supportive of me. And then there's a big group of people who just want help telling and teaching what they know. And since either I or one of my producers will walk a guest on through the master class format, we are coaching out of them how they did the thing that they did so well. And most people don't spend time thinking about it, and they definitely aren't coached about how to teach it. And I've got this one, not just one, I have multiple recordings of me walking an entrepreneur through teaching their story and teaching what they do best. And you can see how I will interrupt, how I'll guide them. I'll say, no, if you're going to say that you did that, give me an example. And that's not a good example. That doesn't fit. Let's go, right? And they want that. And within an hour, because they don't have a lot of time, within an hour, we can coach out and then do our own research before and after a process that they go through to do the thing that they do best. And they could take it and do a masterclass with us. And then they're happy that it's not all over the internet, because then they can go and do it as a presentation in a webinar for themselves or in a presentation at a conference or somewhere else. And so that's a big reason why they do it. Now, if I had to do it again, I don't know if I would have stuck with that model. I might have said, I'm going to create my own content and I will keep 100% of the revenue from that. But anyone else who wants to add to it can add their own content to it and split the revenue with us. And maybe that would have been a better approach, actually. More of the Skillshare model.
So what is the process? So what are some of the questions you ask to prompt people to take them down that path?
What's the thing that you're going to teach? Like, what do you do especially well? Now, we usually will know that, but if I would ask you, Brad, what's the thing that you're especially good at?
I mean, it's a great question.
I might start with hiring, since you brought up hiring. I might start with customer acquisition, right? Is there something around customer acquisition you're especially good at?
I mean, here's the problem with me, Andrew. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm especially good at anything. Okay. I think I'm always trying to get better at everything.
Okay, that's fair. What is it that, so I would start off with first of all, I would research you to understand what people want to know about what you do. Sure. But the other thing I do is I start off with, how do you get customers? That's something that a lot of people are trying to do in my audience. So I might ask you, are you doing anything to cold call customers or to take in calls? I'm finding that there's a big interest in my audience for that. Do you do that? You don't.
But we're just starting to
You just started to do it. Okay, so that's too early to say that. But one of the things that I discovered when I went through your process was that there's someone who calls me back. There's like a process for not just doing it all online, right?
Right.
So where does that start?
Immediately.
So
as soon as somebody fills out a form, our team is on it within 3 minutes.
And then how fast do you close a sale, or how likely are you to close a sale that way?
Goal is one call, right?
One call, and then you close the sale with someone who signed up online.
That's the objective.
Okay, great. So how do you close a sale with a call? That's the topic that I would go for, because I would find that a lot of people in my audience are like me. All we do is we sell online, we let our web pages do the selling, and we keep improving our sites. But for many products, a call works better, right? And you've done it. Most people don't do it. And so I would say, okay, what's the first step that we need? And my guess is that you're going to say a landing page that asks for a phone number, not just an email address.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So great. I would ask you about how you did that. What is it about the landing page? Are you asking for an email address and a phone number and a name? Is there anything else?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So we have actually 11 data points that we capture, and we're following up on people that actually start an application. So the CTA on that, the call to action on that is get started now. So when somebody does that, then our team has not only name and email, but we have expected revenue, location, marketing model, URL. So we have a bunch of data points.
So it's also called an application, not an interest or an inquiry form.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So I would ask you that. And then I would say the next step is you call them. How do you get them to actually pick up the phone? Because I don't pick up a call from a number I don't know.
Here's some ninja shit.
Yeah.
One of the best things that we found out in the last probably 2 years is you have an iPhone. I know this because green messages suck. So when somebody texts you and then they call, if they're not in your phone, what does the call come through as?
Unknown or just number?
Unless in the text message they say, hey, Andrew, this is Brad.
Oh, and then it says, I think it's Brad. Oh, that is a great... So you just text them with the name.
Right.
Say, hey, I would text them and say, hey, it's Andrew Warner. I'm going to call you in a moment because I saw you fill out the form. Perfect. Now, you see how that is a ninja move? It also makes sense and it's easy to replicate. So perfect. That's what you do. That would be my second thing. And by the way, for both of those, what I would do is I would get screenshots of it. So if you're telling me you have an application, I find that to show the application lets people understand it better than just telling them. If you're 100%. Showing what it looks like when it's from Brad, I would reproduce it. You wouldn't have to do it, Brad. I would reproduce it for you. So we'd have those screenshots to show. The next thing I might ask is, and I don't want to go too deep into this here, though it's kind of fascinating to do it. The next thing is, what is the first thing that you say on a call when somebody applies and you call them up?
Yeah, good question. So we recap the information we have. And we have I'd have to pull it up, but we have a scripted approach to exactly what we're trying to recap and accomplish. And one of the most important things in that call is to set expectations and set the frame for the rest of the experience. And we reiterate, because with us, it's a relationship sale, right? So once somebody has gotten up and running, we want to keep that relationship going. And multiple people touch it, but we set the frame early and then often throughout the process.
Okay. Now you see how this becomes really meaningful. So if I had you on to do an interview, it would be an interview about how you built this business up. If I had you on to do a masterclass, it would be how they could build their business up using one of the techniques. And now you also could understand as you're going through this, wow, what we do actually did take us a long time to build. It is helpful. I would want to show this to other people. Maybe you might say, Andrew, there are a couple of things I'd rather you not show. Don't show the script or black out this section of the script. Great, we do it. You see the response from my audience and you realize, hey, we actually could use this as one of our lead magnets, or we could use this as training for our people. Or next time you sit down at a baby bathwater event, right? And they say, who has like an impromptu thing that they want to talk about? And you say, Andrew gave me the slides from this thing and it was helpful. No one's recording this. I feel comfortable showing it here. And you might show it to them and they'll come back and talk to you about how they could do it themselves. And now you've got a conversation about how you can help them. And by the way, what is it that you do, Brad? And they'll ask you that question and they might end up being customers of yours. So that's the model of the masterclass.
So that also might have been a really great answer to the question, how do you get good people on your show? And the answer that you just gave was, and this is maybe something you do, maybe not, but the answer could have been I explained to them the value proposition. I explained to them that I'm going to help them in so many other ways by being on the show. And in this case, it was, I'll give you resources from the recording. I'll give you assets from the recording. And that was for the masterclass, right? But I'll give you assets from the recording that will help you in other ways in your business.
So in the beginning, if I couldn't get a guest because my audience was big enough and podcasting made no sense. And I absolutely used that technique a lot. I said, I will help you tell your story to my audience so that you know how to tell your story when you're hiring or when you're giving a speech. Say, I'm especially good at coaching stories and examples out of people. And by the way, I wouldn't say that's what I would do. What I would say is one of the reasons why people do interviews with me is because they want to know how to tell their story better. And so that's a reason why I would get a good guest. Another thing that I would do is I would say, I can't really convert. So again, Andrew Monday, the guy who created Local Kitchens, he wasn't looking for people to come into his restaurant and buy food from him. It's not an efficient way to spend an hour so that he could get 5 people to come into the one place he has in San Francisco. But he wanted good content on the internet for anyone who wanted to work with him, to get a sense of how much of a beast he is, that if they're going to work with him, they should expect to be in beast mode the whole time and enjoy it. And so he did the interviews so that when someone wanted to apply for a job with him, they would see his beast mode and understand what he's about. I do that too. I say to guests a lot, if I can't really help them with an audience, I say, when someone's going to come to apply for a job at your new company, they're going to research you. They're going to want to know your origin story. This is a good thing for them to find on Google, your story with me. And so they'll often do it for the 3 people who they care about.
I like that. Okay. So other tactical things relative to the show, to making things happen. Distribution. So one of the things you said was, first of all, you said you're charging people to listen to your old episodes. So are those things that are no longer on any of the platforms?
Yeah, they're no longer on any of the platforms. It kind of sucks in some ways because HubSpot has this network. Do you know it?
No.
They have a network of podcasters that are all now, first of all, they're buying ads. I don't know how much I could reveal from it, but they didn't ask me not to, so I can tell you. They're buying half the ad inventory in each podcaster that's in their network.
Oh, Sam Parr just sold to them, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And so he's in the network, and then they're kind of building the network off of that. And then so half the ads they will sell, or actually, no, they'll use it to promote their own content. So they're buying half your ads to sell HubSpot software. And then they're also asking for promotion of another podcaster in the network. And that's the offering that they give you. They'll pay you, they'll take half your ad space to promote their software, and they'll get you an audience by doing this swap where you promote one of the other podcasters, the other podcaster promotes you. They looked at my numbers and they were surprised. And the reason they were surprised was because they're expecting tons of downloads. And because my older interviews are behind the membership wall, that doesn't get counted. And so they said, actually, we don't want to work with you. So as far as audience numbers goes, it definitely influences the audience numbers, which is now a potential problem for me.
Interesting problem. And also, it means that you make the money directly, as opposed to pushing the numbers out of the network and then looking at acquisition or something.
And we do get advertising also, but it's something I might want to reconsider. I might say all the older interviews are just available in your podcast app, but if you pay a membership, you get access to these master classes. I don't know. We can change it a lot. I used to have them all in the podcast apps, and people weren't paying attention to older interviews. If you look at your own consumption, I bet that it's really rare for you to scroll through 100 or 200 episodes of a show that you like, right?
Yes.
You go through the latest 5. Yeah. And then maybe you hear about one that was especially good, and that's it. So I listen to Joe Rogan. I go through the latest 5. If there's one person I like, I go and I hit play on it. And then maybe I might go back and say, hey, he interviewed Elon Musk a year or 2 ago and they smoked weed. I'll go hunt for that. And that's it. So that's what I do. I put the latest in the feed and then 1 or 2 of the amazing ones.
So, okay. So, right. You've got stuff behind the paywall because it's no longer on the platforms because you were doing this before the platforms are what they are since 2007. What else? What are you doing currently? But the reason I brought that up is because you put it behind the paywall to monetize, but then you changed the monetization point and decreased it because you said you wanted more exposure. You wanted the audience to be larger for that. What are you doing to get exposure for the podcast in general? How do you push the content out? Are there other distribution channels you use? How deliberate are you with that?
I don't. I think we should. We should probably do clips on YouTube. And there's someone who took clips of my interview and he put it on TikTok and they did well there. Mm-hmm. The number one thing that I do is every older interview automatically, our software will automatically make it so that if you hit play on an older interview, there's a pop-up box that comes on using a ClickFunnels form that says, enter your name and email to get this. And they would enter their name and email address and get the interview. And so that helps us build a list of people who are interested in our stuff. I find that when I listen to other people's interviews, like I wanted to get a sex therapist. I want to get better at sex. So I said, all right, maybe that's a thing. Like, I don't care about hip hop dance lessons. I'm going to take that, but maybe this is something I could get better at. And so I went and I listened to this podcast of a local therapist here in Austin, and I hit play on it. And I thought, I might actually want to like listen to more of their stuff. Maybe they're interviewing other people I should get to know. I freaking can't remember the name of the podcast because I hit play on it. It was in the background and that was it. Imagine if they would have taken my email address before. Maybe I would have at least given them my throwaway. I don't care. I would give them my real email address, let people know that I want to get better at that. But they lost me. And I find that a lot of times we don't value our shit online because there's so much of it. And if we don't value our shit, no one else is going to value it. Yeah. And I think that if you value it, people will care about it more. And the example that I give is I once went to a Learning Annex class when I lived in Los Angeles. I forget what it was about, but I do remember this. The seats in the front row were empty. We literally were sitting on boxes in the back behind the back row because we all feel uncomfortable, with like being with people, right? And being the dork in the front of the class. So the front row, except for one person, was empty, and the second row was empty. And it's weird for the person who's speaking to show that there are a couple of empty rows there because it looks like they're a failure, like no one wants to watch it. Meanwhile, a bunch of us are sitting literally on boxes in the back of the room. Then I saw another presenter who charged VIP tickets to sit in the front, charge more to sit in the front. Mm-hmm. Now those seats were full because people who paid VIP are showing up, and those who didn't, if they're empty spots, he could say, by the way, if you didn't pay for a VIP seat, the people who paid, there are 3 of them who didn't show up yet, take their spots. And now people are rushing to take it. And so I charge for my older stuff, partially because I want people to value the older stuff. Mm-hmm. Because if they're not valuing it, then I should value it to make sure that they understand that there's value there.
I love that. So, I moments ago, you said, what are you good at? I said, I don't really think I'm good at anything. I think it's a human problem. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's social construct, but I think it's a human problem, not putting enough value on ourselves.
Yes.
And I see this play out very often in sales. And specifically, my closest contact to sales is our sales team. But it's all salespeople get in this place of they feel like they are pushing too hard or they're selling too hard. And the consistent reminder for a sales manager or a sales leader is to talk to them and say, by not pursuing that, you are not helping this person get the product or service that they need. And if you're not doing your job to push that message out, you're doing them a disservice in the process. Yeah. And I think part of that is just emphasizing the value of what you're doing and reminding yourself there are people out there that need to hear this, that need to get this. And you're a great example. Now you're terrible at sex because they did not get your email address.
I wouldn't say terrible, but who knows? Like maybe you should interview my wife. She might say terrible. Yeah, I know it. And I think that we don't realize it until we think of a time in our lives when we didn't follow through. And all it took was one little call or one push from someone else to follow through. I had my teeth whitened yesterday. How do they look?
I actually noticed earlier that
did you really?
Nice. Yeah, I did.
Do you know how many times I tried to get my teeth whitened in San Francisco? It's freaking pain in the butt. I wanted it, but I'm busy and whatever. I literally went and I had someone create a mold in Berkeley, which is like right over the bridge from San Francisco. They created a mold. And then I never followed through and went in to have my teeth whitened after I sat through the freaking mold. You know what they did at this place? When I was done having my teeth cleaned for the routine checkup and cleaning, I asked them about teeth whitening. On my way out, they said, if you want to sign up, you can pay for it right now. And I go, okay. So if you want to book it, right? So I booked it. And I forgot that I even booked and paid for it until I left yesterday. And I said, wait, was I so dizzy that I didn't actually pay for this? And I realized, no, they took the money before. So that was phenomenal. So
locks you in.
We're talking over a decade. My assistant used to call up different places in San Francisco to try to make it convenient. And when I would find one, they would never follow up enough. Imagine if they would have said, okay, Andrea, we have this teeth whitening. And if what time does Andrea want to book? She had my freaking calendar. She would have booked it.
So yes. An assistant named Andrea? You have Andrea
I know. It's so confusing for people.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think it also goes back to a lot of the time people don't do it because they feel like they're putting too much pressure on the buyer, and they lose sight of the fact that the buyer really wants to buy, and you're not giving them an easy enough path to do it. We're all busy. We're busier and busier in life, and we're more and more distracted in life than we've ever been because all these people are vying for attention. All it took was the suggestion that maybe you pay for it ahead of time.
Yes. Yeah, to be that. And I could understand if I was running a dentist office, I might say, I don't want to be pushy. We're in their mouths. We don't want to be aggressive salespeople, But when you're a customer, I think that customers, when they're really waiting to buy, they need that push. I need it.
I need it.
Yeah. You know what, dude? So I've been wanting to write a book for years. If you go back to the early episodes of my podcast over a decade ago, I'm saying I'm writing a book, and it didn't happen. I finally said, you know what? I'm going to pay for pressure. I hired an editor from Penguin, and I said, can you just get on a call with me every week and make sure that I'm doing the right thing? And what I really was looking for was a babysitter, someone to read and tell me that was okay.
I love it.
And make sure that I showed up and did the work.
Why'd you pick Penguin?
Just through a referral.
Got it.
It was a someone who worked with someone who I contacted.
Why did you pick traditional publishing versus
No, I didn't.
self-publishing?
I actually, since I'm a startup person, I went with a startup person. I talked to her. I said, should I go traditional or what? She said, you can go traditional. It's going to take a long time, and it's probably not going to be worth your while to do it. She said, if I were you, I would just go and publish it however you could. And since I'd wasted so much time not writing the book, I said, I don't want anything to slow this down. Now, I'm a startup person. My whole audience is startups. My interviewees are startups. So I went with a startup book publishing company. And truthfully, there's a challenge there. And I think that one of my things is that I have to keep working with startups. I was the first person to use Zapier, for example, the software that merges any two business apps, basically. Their stuff sucked. It was like so random how they were grabbing my data. They were figuring the thing out. I couldn't use it myself. He had to explain to me, trust me, and I trusted him, right? And things worked out, and we've had a long relationship now. But, with the book publisher, there were typos in the book, in the first version, and I didn't know what to – I was so bummed, so devastated. I wanted to write a book, and this was like everything that I understood about having good conversations all in a book. I was so proud of it. I didn't know what to do, and I was so depressed, I guess, about it. And thankfully, my wife said, okay, I'm going to step in. And she called up the publisher. She basically, through the conversation, had the editor who made the mistake fired.
Wow.
Oh, Olivia's freaking badass. Had them redo the book. It's going to be here at my house in 2 days.
That's awesome, dude. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Okay. So I want to talk about 1,000 things, but I want to also highlight the book one more time. The title of it is
Stop Asking Questions.
And is there a subtitle on this?
It's basically how to learn anything from anyone by adding interviewing to your learning stack.
Love it. I love the title of the book. And Amazon thing, are you selling it direct through your website? Are you bundling it with something? How are you going to launch the book?
It's actually in the Amazon bookstore now. People have bought it. And the Kindle version is surprisingly, even with my tech audience, it's basically 50-50 with the paper version, but the Kindle version was updated first. I love it. I just realized your dog was right behind us.
Yes.
He's got the coolest freaking dog.
The professor's chilling all the time.
Following you. We were at a party and the dog was just kind of following you around like a buddy. Has a mohawk like you.
He is my buddy.
Yeah. So perfect.
I tell people he's my favorite. and my mother has always said that it's better to have dogs than kids.
I think you should have kids only because you're so freaking good with kids.
I appreciate that.
I don't know where
I really like other people's kids.
Yeah, there's a difference, right?
Absolutely.
Like you can come and hang out. Do you have a thing that you do when you hang out with kids? Because my kids, I think, just kind of dug you because you're like, they're now 7 and 5. They're like the athletic kind of people that, that they're starting to find that part of them. And you're an athlete and you're kind of a little bit childlike independent. You know what I mean? Right? Like,
no, what does childlike independent mean?
You came in with a broken freaking foot, walking over to the restaurant with someone who was clearly a physical therapist telling you don't do it, and you're just like them. You still walk on. You go, it'll be fine. Go, no, it's not. I'm professional. I'm telling you. You could just rest for a moment. You don't have to walk in here. It'll be fine. They're like the kids who walk into school going, I'm going to wear shorts yesterday, even though it was raining in Austin. No, we'll be fine. That's what I mean.
I see.
You stood up to the professional.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just gotta keep going in life. Gotta keep going.
It's admirable.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, how do you promote yourself? Where do people find you if they want to find out about you?
I'm totally Googleable. Andrew Warner, totally Googleable, easy to spell. Unlike the name that I was born with, I changed it to a name that's totally Googleable.
Oh,
so you can find me in the podcast.
What were you born with?
Shuki Khalili.
Whoa,
Yeah,
no shit. How do you spell that?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I
That's
changed
hilarious.
it. Yeah.
You just changed it?
I changed it legally. Yeah.
When?
So I was doing these tests when I was making phone calls to sell for my first company. And the name that did the best was Tom Warner, just like random. And I realized it's because there's Time Warner, the cable company. So it sounded just familiar enough that you want to take the call, but not so much that you feel like it's a buddy of yours. And so I went with Tom Warner for a while instead of Shuki Khalili. I would call Shuki Khalili. I could hear the eyes roll and people stopped paying attention. Tom Warner, people paid attention to. And I said, okay, I'm using this enough that it's kind of awkward if I land somewhere and people see me and they see that my name is really Shuki Khalili and it feels like it's a lie. I said, I have to change.
It was a lie.
Pseudonym, right? And then I thought, all right, I can't be Tom. What name do I go with? Because I just don't feel like a Tom. And as a kid, I really admired Andrew Carnegie. I used to read books in Andrew Carnegie's library. I used to all kinds of stuff. I said, okay, Andrew. So I'll go with Andrew. And then Andrew Warner doesn't sound as familiar as Tom Warner. Doesn't work as well, but I feel more like an Andrew than I do a Tom. So there, changed it legally.
That's ridiculous and hilarious and awesome.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Well, I appreciate it. Let's do a version 2 and dive into adventure. And you ran a marathon on every continent.
Because of you. No, I was going to do it. This is so great. You don't know how grateful I am for you. We had that conversation over Taco Deli and coffee.
Yes.
And I told you I was going to start doing it and I was going to do maybe one a year. And you said, do it faster. And I remember arguing with you, but also telling you this is not coming from a place of disagreement or I'm just telling you all the issues that I have in my head about it. And you said, can you do it in a day? I go, this is no. Can you run on the plane over to each marathon and do it in a week? I go, no. And then I realized through that conversation that what I wanted was to experience each continent. And it was important to me be on the ground, talk to people, get to know them. And so we ended up with an idea of doing 7 marathons in 1 year, on 7 marathons, 7 continents, 1 year. And I got to know the world so much more for that. And I was so grateful to you that sometimes I feel like I thank you for it. And Brad's like, cut this is like awkward. Enough already. I got it. But I'm so grateful. I mean,
I love it.
Can you
Keep
imagine if
doing
I didn't do it? And it was so much more exciting to have that quest. Can I do it in a year? Can I get to Antarctica?
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Well, let's talk more about that over bourbon and we'll sit in the comfy chairs next time.
Okay. I'm down.
I love it, man. I appreciate you coming out, dude.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.